now. Welcome to our call. And uh, so I'm very happy to have Joy with us. And Joy basically means happiness, and she brings happiness wherever she goes. And she was first, she did her MBA. First, she was bringing a lot of joy in the corporate room. You know, she tried. She learned valuable life skills, and of course, she knows how to smile very well. As you can see, she's got a 1,000-watt smile, and she was doing very well. She was a very well-known HR figure, and also in the Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences, she is still the president and a very important figure. But then one day, I think in 2003, which is over 2 decades ago, she looked around her office and thought, you know what? Dealing with demanding clients is great, but what if I work with people who have a right to be demanding, you know, who can throw tantrums when they don't get their way? And that is how a beautiful journey with children began. She founded Makala Jagrati, and Makala Jagrati does not mean a career crisis, it means the awakening of children. So that is what she started, and she has been at it right from there. So she went from managing quarterly reports to managing tiny human beings who think that vegetables are toys and conspiracies and not to be eaten. And she discovered that the corporate skills are transferable, and I can vouch that Makla Jagrati is a better corporate in terms of the practices than even some of the MNCs. And she then, you know, honed her budgeting skills or used her budgeting skills, which were honed in another MNC in Makala Jagrati. And now, when there are any tantrums, she gives them a piece of paper and asks them to draw. So now you can, she finds puppets and colorful charts and training aids as the tools to be used. And then now, Makal Jagrati is indeed one of the biggest NGOs in India and works with a very difficult client, which is the government and people who are at the marginalized level of society, because most of our work is with municipal schools. I will let her speak the rest. Welcome, Joy. Really a pleasure to have you. And the first thing I want you to tell me is, of course, I said, what I knew about yourself. Tell us a little more about yourself and maybe one or two milestones, and I'm sure I've missed many of them.
Okay. Thanks, Gayatri. I'm happy to be here sharing a little journey of mine and how I led myself into starting Makla Jagrati. Primarily, I grew up in Bangalore. My parents descended from Andhra in 1940s kind of time frame. So all of us were born here and raised in Bangalore. So that way, I'm very much a Bangalorean. So in my growing up years, I lived, very close to Lal Bagh was my house, and it was a
Oh,
mini colony by itself, where there were very diverse kind of people who resided in that little pocket of space where we grew up. It was a beautiful environment and a big well, and you could draw water from the well. All that was the childhood memories I have. You could climb trees and all that, etc.
within
Now,
Bangalore, it sounds
within Bangalore,
unreal.
yes. And I remember we used to take a bucket and take the water from the huge well and then use it for our own cooking and etc. So it used to be that kind of an environment. At the same time, as I was growing up there, I also sort of experienced and noticed that there was so much of discrimination existing within that diverse space that we were living, especially when it came to education. I did see a lot of the privileged people undermining the underprivileged within that little colony. It's like a micro space, emulating the macro, in terms of making the poorer children within that community to say, you don't have to go to school, you stay back, you come and help us in the domestic chore, kind of a thing. So while I was noticing, I was experiencing, and I was getting like really agitated within myself, like, what is this? Why is this kind of disparity? And so what I did was, though I got ridiculed a couple of times by my friend's father, used to say, you will not make it where my children are going to make it in education. He even told me once that how my children are being sent to a convent school where they're learning English, but you're going to, after all, a Tamil medium school, because I studied in a school where up till fifth standard there was Tamil medium, and from sixth onwards English was introduced. So, but for me, I never retaliated with him, but I said, let me show. I went about doing what I'm supposed to do. I pursued my education despite all the difficulties. And learning English suddenly from Tamil medium to all subject in English was not easy, but somehow I just was very determined that I will ensure not stop going to school. My parents were very encouraging, and although my parents were very well to do at one point of time, but then suddenly my father's business fell all over, and then suddenly there was extreme difficulty at home financially. There was a threat, I should have stopped going to school, that kind of a situation arose. But somewhere I felt that that shouldn't stop me, and I somehow managed to continue to study, and I finished my 10th. uh, but there was a lot of resolve within inside me which was brewing. Why this disparity, and why is that people are being discriminated? And there were a lot of class issue, caste issue, so much I could see in and around me in that space. But one thing which I made sure for myself is that how can I become what the others are thinking I shouldn't be. When my friend's father says you can't even go near the college where my daughters are studying because you wouldn't make it, and I said, let me make it. I don't have to get stuck with what he's saying, but let me show it to him that how capable we are. So I think that's the kind of stronger resolve came perhaps from my own internal belief that I had about myself, and trying to say, look, and emerging from this, social forces within that community where they're trying to push you down. And I said, look, no, I'm not going to buckle down for this. And sometimes they used to even tell my father and mother, your youngest daughter is very very courageous, she back answers and she questions us, because the rest of them wouldn't question some of these people, right? So that's the kind of impressions I've had, Gayatri, when I was growing up. And for me, that become like a foundation of really working towards discrimination, or looking down upon the people who can't afford certain privileges, right? um, so I educated myself, then I looked at, like, how do I really empower all my family members to get educated. Then I looked at how can I spread my wing to look at all the more poorer children in and around my community, to really motivate them to go to school. So that's how I began this whole
Joy, I can't hear you. Can you?
purpose of passion to support many children to go to school. And
Joy, we are losing your audio in between.
in nine.
Joy, we are having
Oh,
problem with your
okay.
audio going in and out.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well, but we didn't hear the last
Can you
few
hear me
seconds.
now?
Yes, I can hear you now very clearly.
Okay.
Go on. Just repeat what you said.
Okay.
You're talking about how
Yeah,
you help people.
Yeah.
your family members first, and then the surrounding.
Then the surrounding, and picked up a lot of children around, and then said, look, education is the key, and you need to really move from the, it's like, what I realized in my growing up years is that the underprivileged or the marginalized are being told that education is not yours, right? Education belongs to a certain class of people or certain caste of people. Therefore, you're told like you are not there. You're meant for doing some domestic chores, or you're meant for doing something else. For me, that was the core which caught my attention,
Mm,
and I said, no, this is something which I need to really prove that it is not true.
right.
So much so, then I believe that every child who is born on this planet is equal, and it has to be given the equal opportunity to really gain. And also, like what Dr. Ambedkar has said, education is the key for eradicating poverty. uh,
Definitely.
for me, Dr. Ambedkar and Nelson Mandela, um,
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther, all these are like my gurus, who have really made revolutionized how do you really make the marginalized stand up with their own power. Because somewhere I always felt that how the oppressed community is always made to believe that you are powerless, and you don't have enough knowledge or ability or competence, and you're meant to do something else. For me, I always believe that the power, the marginalized as the brilliant power, and how they need to only capitalize and feel confident to see that, look, I have it and I can become who I want to become. And I think that was the
Right.
that was the core of, for me, as a person, and even for Makla Jagati, that
So,
is the core purpose.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you were doing this while you were working, but then you decided to take a very bold decision of just doing this full time in 2003. So, what inner reflection helped you recognize this, that children also needed their empowerment and authority rather than just traditional educational approaches? And how has this shaped the DNA of Makala Jagat? Joy, did you hear me?
Hello,
Joy,
Gayatri.
did you hear me? Hear my question?
Yeah, I heard you, but you got frozen. But I can now share
Okay, I
what
think
made me to move.
for me also you seem to be frozen right now.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yes, I can
Okay.
hear you.
Yeah. So, I was working with Digital Equipment India Limited. I was in a good position as in the corporate world. I was almost holding a manager kind of a role there. Uh, but when Digital, the work culture, it was a fantastic moment for me to grow into many levels there. Then Compact took over, and then there was opportunity for me to grow. But something was not sitting well for me inside, something, because I was parallelly doing this, my passion of really working with children to motivate them to get educated. But somewhere, being full time in a corporate was not giving me that full fledged understanding of how to go about it. One fine day, I decided, let me quit this job, without much thinking. I said, and I didn't have that kind of bank balance where I could have sustained myself. But somehow I took the risk and saying that the universe will support me. So I just quit the job, and luckily I have very good friends with whom, like, I used to really connect, and they've been a big pillar of support. So I took, in fact, I landed up in their house, and I stayed there in their house, and that was a big support system for me. um, so for me, then I looked at doing this in a very smaller way or in a sporadic manner. It's not really helping, but something bigger has to happen. And that's when this whole idea of starting a trust, Makla Jagrati Trust, came into my head. Then I requested my friend Vish if he wants to be the trustee, and then one other person, Sahin. So we all together said, look, let's form a trust. From then on, there's no looking back, because I then looked at how, through this trust as an organization, how can I make this more as a forward going initiative than looking at from an individual. Because what I was doing earlier was more from the personal, individual kind of a situation. But when it became Makla Jagrati, then I started looking at from the lens of how can I build it as an organization. So the passion was there because of the early impressions I carried, or early experiences I carried. Amplifying it through Makla Jagrati as an organization become more clearer once I formed a trust. Um and then when I began, when I formed a trust, and then we looked at like what, how do you address it, then I looked at, so that's where my whole experience in the corporate came very handy. Looking at not from a very only from the passion level, but how do you mold your passion into building into an organization processes itself. So I think parallelly I looked at these two things. I have this passion, I have this compassion, and I want to do this as an initiative. But how do I build it into something which will really sustain itself in the future? I think that clarity was helpful from the very beginning. Therefore, what I did was, while looking at the passion, looked at what are the spaces how Maklajakti can be intervening directly into the urban slums, working with the government systems, helping this whole idea of bringing quality education, access to quality education for the underprivileged was the core. And what are the mediums you can bring and influence the urban slum parents and urban slum children? And then, how do you influence the government system to scale our program was one of the key ingredients we looked at as an objective of the organization.
Yeah.
At the same time, looked at how do you build a team, how do you build the passion into this team, how do you create vision, mission, values, and the culture, how do you put processes in place so that the organization can really imbibe this whole program that Makla Jagati
Right,
was
right.
doing.
I
Yeah,
think it's a very relevant learning for coaches also, because many of us are at a stage, we are coaches where we have a passion for it, but how do you combine that passion with hardcore structure and processes for
yeah,
long-term impact, which also means that if I have a coaching, they should learn to coach themselves. So I have
yeah,
a question on that aspect. You
yeah,
are also a coach who is working with many non-profit companies, etc. So are there any practices that could be spiritual or just could be, rituals which help you maintain resilience and clarity when you address this, you know, of course, the educational equity is so big that you have to really bite at it little by little. So, how do you coach yourself through moments of doubts and when it is very overwhelming?
yeah. See, when your passion is strong, when you encounter any challenge, you
Mm,
will not deter, right? So it's not like all rosy when I was building Makla Jagati. There were
mm,
like challenging moments. There were many experiments I did in developing people from the slum community to run this organization. Uh, Made them to become like stronger in their own resolve to really own it and say, look, this is, I can contribute back to the social issues. But when I got encountered at one time, I remember when some backstabbing happened by the own people that I was developing. They were like backstabbing, and they were like leaving the organization, into working with somebody else. And that moment was like a moment of, I stood there and I said, is it about me, or is it about the purpose with I'm working? Then I said, no matter how I get challenged, and I also recognized there is the social forces which will come and shake me up in situations, because I'm walking against the current. I'm trying to bring a paradigm shift in the social fabric of what we want to do. Then I said, I will go ahead and march towards it. And for me, Gayatri, I always believed there is an universal force which always guided me, you know, and that strong belief always kept me going in encountering many of the challenges I would have faced. So much so, I remember one of the funders was being difficult at one time, and we were going to work with the children from the um, crisis intervention center, where children walk away from different parts of India, and the government runs a shelter home for them. And
Mhm.
these are the children who come with such emotional baggages along with them. And we were to set up our learning centers inside this home for such
Yeah.
children. And the funder was like really trying to go on a question like about our financial practices. Despite me explaining all that, he was still being very hard on us. Then I told him, are you not trusting us? He said, no, 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 I trust you. But then I told him, look, I'm going to work with the government system which nobody trusts, and I'm going to work with the children who are not trusting them, but I don't want a funder who doesn't trust me. So I just walked out of that place, and so my colleagues who had come with me were like shocked. Aren't we supposed to just be a little more, you know,
Right.
practically thinking and all that? And you're taking a decision to walk out is a big risk. What we'll do, because in a week's time we have to start this center and we have to inaugurate it and we need money. I said, go ahead and plan for the inauguration, the money will come. So I went back to one of my other friends who usually donates, and he had just donated some weeks back. But I went back to him. I said, "Look, I need the support," and he said, "Please tell me how much I need to give it to you." And you know, so I think for me that is the universal force which always guided me in doing what it is, and I believe. Some of my board members always make fun of me. Joy always believes in universe, but you need to be practical. But I believe universe always
Yeah. Joy, I can't hear you now. Yeah, you were talking about
you're there.
how I'm there now, but I lost you in between when you said that your board members say make fun of you, saying that you're always saying the universe is there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
So for
yeah,
me, yeah, when they say that, but then later on they began to believe me. They're saying, yeah, like I think your universe
so
works.
you converted them also into believers in the
Yeah, and now it has
universe.
become like a culture within MJ. Like even the CEO of MJ now believes that there is universal support that guidance will
When
come.
you say MJ, I'm just thinking you're like Michael Jackson, you know, conquering the world. Let
Yeah.
me ask you about other things. See, your approach is that you're giving children their awakening and their empowerment. We as coaches often deal with this even with adults, right? Having to make them feel empowered, etc. So, and we have to deal with our own children who may feel, even though we may be of better social class, even there the empowerment is not always there. So, how do you coach your team and volunteers to shift from just helping to empowering? You know,
Yeah.
where would you put that?
See, when you facilitate an individual, whether it's a child, whether it's an adult, whether it's a team, if you take a position of wanting to counsel them, then you are giving away ideas to them, right? But if you start your position from actually empowering them by helping them to see what they are not able to see, um, I think that is what is empowering. um, when we work with the marginalized children and the youth that we work with, our approach has been to help them to get into reflecting about their own behavior, reflecting about their own inadequacies, reflecting about their own fears, and reflecting about what is stopping them to become who they want to become. By asking an inquiry questions always helps people to become more aware of it and then discover their own light within. I think that's the approach. In fact, our tagline is discover the light within. Uh, so even when I was building the team, it's always like I remember every month we used to have this review meetings. All the team which worked in different centers would come to a monthly review meeting, and every first Wednesday of the month was a review meeting. So all the team will come and we will spend a day together. The first half day will be reflecting on where you are, what's happening to you, in terms of personally what's happening to you. And the post lunch will be about reviewing about each one's project, and each one will share. And then there's cross learning and also picking up best practices from each team, and all that would happen. And they also used to initially bring a lot of challenges and problems.
Mm.
So I used to facilitate right. So much so then a couple of times they came and they found their own solution, they went back, and then later on I heard one of the team members saying, there's no point in bringing problems to this meeting because we have to find our own solution. So it's better we don't bring problem. So I think
Yeah.
to that extent they felt that there is solution within me. Can I only pay attention to it? Can I become more aware of? First question is, why do I create problems for myself? Second question is, if I have to create problem, then I have to also find solution. But I felt like that they felt more empowered when they saw competence and ability. Am I putting that into use? I think coaching is all about that, right? You really help people to see, are you really unraveling your complete potential. And
Yeah.
if not, what is hindering you, or what is stopping you, or what is blocking you, right? I think that's the approach I've always taken, whether it's
Yeah.
with children, it's with my own child, or with Makla Jagti children, or with the teams that I work with, or with the organizations I consult with.
Right.
um,
And yeah,
yeah,
and
that's
of course, you're familiar with Edgar Schein's work. So he's written this very nice book called Humble Inquiry, and it talks about exactly putting yourself in just a curious frame when you're coaching, not judging, not. So I think
yeah,
this exemplifies that extremely well.
exactly.
So how do you
Yeah,
balance
exactly.
this uh, two-pronged things of honoring each child's empowerment and their own essence, and creating a path where they will also acquire practical skills needed for mainstream opportunities? Because it's two different things.
Yeah,
Sometimes they may not gel together, and there may be pressure from parents and for coaches from the stakeholders of the people they are coaching to go a different way, and especially a quick way.
yeah,
So, what is your approach to that?
yeah. See, as an adult, when you're intervening by sort of uh, pushing your agenda onto the child, then it becomes your agenda and not the child's agenda, right? Whether it's a parent or a teacher or a boss in your organization.
Mm.
Now, how do you really listen to the child's voice? What does the child want to do? And therefore you can facilitate that process for the child. So in if I have to talk about Makla Jagrati, the children came with different understanding of what they want to do or what they don't want to do. I
Right.
still remember some of the youth came up to me. They said, I'm not interested in studying 10th standard. Academics is not my cup of tea. Now, in the usual sense, what happens? One would push them to say, no, 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 you better finish it. It's most important, blah, 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 all that. But I just said, okay, what is it you would like to do? And then looking at it, some of them fitted well into academics and they finished their degrees. Some of them said, look, I want to become entrepreneur, and that they are thriving in entrepreneurship. They started something like
Wow.
yeah. And some of them become like taekwondo resource people. some of them become dance teachers, some of them become like cater. So, and everybody's thriving now. Our early centers where we started near Adugodi, a huge slum near LR
Yes,
Nagar,
yes,
many children used to come to our center. Today they're all in different places and thriving in their own profession that they chose. And that removing that barriers of you should, you must, and this is the best for you, to saying like what is that you want to explore and what is that you want to become curious about, actually has enabled many of the children who worked with who came to our center to find their own path.
right.
And for me that's very important. You have to find your own path and feel peace at
Yes,
it.
but so I just thinking practically, their parents, the other stakeholders will also be involved, right? How do you handle that interaction? Because
Yeah.
that matters a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So, as part of our work in Makla Jagrati, what we did was we looked at three stakeholders. One is the, of course, the children, and then the parents are the key stakeholder and the teachers, right? So, we actually, from the beginning of our work, we actually work with the parents, and we used to take them on the retreat, and then give them a lot of awareness about like what is my role as a parent, what are my own set of values, and how do I understand the child, and what is the different understanding of different stages of child development. We used to give them a lot of input, where, like if you remember, all the training, learning and development in the corporate world happens to all the teams and all that, but I was bringing all kind of learning into our parents group, who are domestic workers, vegetable vendors, honey beehive person who, and weavers. Most of our parents were like that, and auto drivers. So I remember me doing a session on gender uh, with the parents group. So we did boy and a girl, and then we asked them to pick up symbols which represents boys and girls. And they brought for girls all the very soft natured kind of objects. For the boys, they bought all the hard kind of things like stick and stone and all that. And the parents soft and whereas boys are strong, they have leadership quality and all that. So then we help them to look at how the both quality exist in both. And so one of the auto drivers, he's a Muslim father, I remember, he very strongly said, it's not that the men don't have the warmth and the nurturing quality in them, it is not actually made to get in touch with. So when, as a boy, when I grow up, I'm not allowed to uh, get in touch
Right.
with my soft
Feelings.
edgedness, whereas girls are allowed to do it. So these insights which they get actually reshape the way they relate to their children back. So as an organization, we have invested a lot in working with parents as well as parallelly, so that they can. And it was initially, it was not easy. They also thought, okay, we didn't get educated, our children should get educated, they should know how to write 1 2 3 ABCD, this is their model of learning, right? But we, coming to our learning centers, engaging with the way the children are flourishing, they also felt more and more confident that education plus other activities what we are doing in the center is a way for child to become who they want to become, and they parallelly walked along, and that whole practice still continues in Makla Jagati. We continue to work with the parents. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a big lesson for us also in dealing with our environment, that we don't just look at the person, but sometimes we may have to interact with the stakeholders and bring
Exactly.
them in. So Peter Hawkins talks about a concept of, how Sleeping Beauty was done in by the 13th fairy. He says, think of the 13th fairy also. She's also a stakeholder,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah. See, it's
So,
like that, that whole ecosystem has to work together in order to bring about any shift that you want to bring about. Like, when an individual is being coached, the individual has a certain issues, but then there are associated issues which is also there, right? And how do you help that person to see it from that lens as well? Sometimes it can become very, I feel very victimized and overwhelmed with my own issues, and therefore I completely blind
Other
possibilities,
issues.
other
So,
possibilities that I can overcome. Yeah,
Joy, I have one question on, so you're working with them, like, suppose you're my coach, you're coaching me, I am working with my stakeholders. Now, you can't do it all through my life. So, how do you help them sustain it on a long term?
yeah. So, as I said earlier, from the individual passion to it become like a trust. Now the trust has to become a bigger organization. That was my intention. I think from the beginning itself, uh, just after experimenting with this, how to go about, what methodologies to use, creating these learning centers near the slums, all that we started with. Then I said, look, let's call different stakeholders and build the shared vision of this organization. So we invited children. In fact, children came up with the name Makkala Jagritiya Sundara Darshana, the
Okay,
name for the visioning process for Makkala
process.
Jagriti. Yeah. So we invited children, children's parents, then teachers, funders. We invited many consultants, many well wishers. About 55 people came together for 2.5 days. We took a methodology called Future Search, and we did a complete shared visioning process, and everybody contributed to what Maklajarti should be in the future. So there was vision, mission, values, culture, everything got evolved, and that became a stronger foundation for Maklajak to take roots of how this organization can evolve as it goes forward, right? And bringing this vision, mission, and internalizing at every level, at different levels, and all the time, stabilize the whole foundation for the organization. And therefore, no matter which team came, what roles they took, it got continuously addressed and got internalized as we grew, and building capacity at different levels in the organization, starting from facilitators to coordinators to managers to the seniors, senior executive CEOs. It's sort of inculcated as a practice within the system. Therefore, over the years, the team inculcated the foundational values, mission, vision, and all that. At the same time, they built their own capacity to understand the program of MJ and started delivering from their role perspective. So there was, role clarity. There were, continuous training and development of competence building for them, and then exposure trips. Everything got inculcated. So the idea was, how do you make this organization sustain and run on its own in the future,
Right, right, right,
and also convert this whole passion of individual into a social movement by itself, right? So I think inculcating such thought into the system took good roots through this foundation. So for my job was, how do I keep this practice of building it at every level at one stage, and then and slowly transitioning into people who can take it forward and do it. It's like a relay race. And a couple of people came, they stabilized it. Couple of people went, but more people came. So today it has become like a solid organization where 200 people are working in Makla Jagriti, and it is run by a very able CEO, Sunaina. She's the
I
CEO.
know. And she's been with you for a long time.
Yeah, she spent 9 years now in Makla Jagriti, and then Rohit is the program director, and there are many people who are assistant directors, managers,
Mm,
coordinators.
right, right,
At every level, everybody is walking the talk of what MJ stands for. I think that's the
right.
key for a founder to
Yeah.
say, wow, this organization on its own, without
Right.
uh, I can sleep with peace every night. I feel confident the organization is held well by this team, and they are
Excellent,
doing
excellent.
absolutely a marvelous job. So I think today Makla Jagati has picked up the whole essence of why it was started, and it is really running it with
Amazing.
that intention in mind. And it's on the auto mode, and I'm only on the governing board. I don't have
Yeah.
any day-to-day
Operational. Yeah.
connection. I only go for the governing board meeting, and of course any new strategic thinking, I'll be involved. and some training and development work I do. But otherwise, I completely have trust the whole team is doing a fantastic job, and it
I
has become
mhm.
social moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also wanting to know about the long-term sustainability of the effect you're having children. So suppose a 10-year-old comes, you're talking to their stakeholders, it's all changed. But very often, uh, we go back after 3 years and in some cases find that they have gone back to their original way. How do you handle that? You know, because some of them will become entrepreneurs and all, but some may still have the parents may have outside pressure which keeps putting pressure even after the change in mind. So has that happened? And if how do you deal with that?
So, I mean, yeah, largely, largely the children who have come and grown in the our learning spaces have sustained their own new way of
Wow,
understanding. They have
they
sustained.
felt empowered.
Yeah, they felt empowered and they see the value, and that's where I'm seeing that they're not dropping the ball, right? Because
Yeah.
in most cases what happens, they'll be given this skill development kind of a thing. They learn and they'll go to some retailer and then they'll leave the job. But that's one key difference what we brought is how do you sustain your interest in whatever you choose, and
Mm.
that has happened. But in sporadic cases some children have really gone because of the parental pressure, like especially some of the girls. um, uh, some of them have got little early marriage, and then they've gotten into the rigmarole of the same thing. But what I'm happy about is even though they got pressurized with the social thing of getting married and all that, but they have gone and started working and not being so
Oh, you.
dependent on
That's
their
really
husband.
that's
That's a paradigm shift from their own, mothers, the daughters becoming different. Those are the instances I
yeah,
can share. Yeah.
yeah. So thanks a lot. That is all the questions that I had, and I have learned a lot from you in terms of having that passion burning with you. And for that, I think even as children, you may change your passion. I go try to play bicycle, I'm not good. I may go to some other uh, passion, but I find my abiding passion. And also the fact that, you're talking about facilitating to help them, empowering them by being curious and helping them see what they want rather
Exactly.
than either skill building or coaching, etc., and not pushing your agenda, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is easy to intellectually it sounds correct, but practically it's very difficult to do. So,
Yeah.
anything else you would like to add as a closing comment, Joy? To all, I mean, this is going to be broadcast to a lot of people, many of them coaches, but there are also a lot of just professionals and, you know, other people who will be watching this. What would you
Yeah.
like to tell them?
See, when you facilitate, what is your intention is very important. Are you facilitating with an intent that I should be a popular person, or are you facilitating to bring about a transformation in the person you are working with? Right? It's not so much about you, it's about the other person, whether it's a participant, whether it's a child, whether it's your spouse, or whether it is a group of people you're working with. So somewhere I feel if you can move out of your own need for popularity or need for what something about you to just being with the other person, then the whole thing can change. For me that has worked always, Gayatri, and I've always felt good about seeing best in everybody, and seeing the um, possibility in every impossible situation.
Yeah,
So I think that has stayed very strong for me because empowering comes from that position, right? If you can see possibility in every impossible situation, that itself is a uh,
resilient gives you a resilience.
yeah, and it can become. So I've always believed in it, and it has worked for me so far. Taking that kind of a position has always helped me, whether I'm building an organization, or I'm consulting, or I'm talking to my child. It works everywhere. So I always go with this thing, and that's where our Makla Jagati's
Mm.
saying is that where you're born should not limit how far you go.
Oh, awesome. That's very
Yeah.
nice thing.
Yeah.
I
So
wanted one more information. You talked about future search. It looks like a technique or
yeah.
something. How can we find out more about that? Any?
It's a methodology. I think you can Google and see.
Yeah.
So we use that methodology to. Um, it's like more exploratory and experiential kind of methodology, where you really use that as a as a technique